Back in early 2023, I made a video called Sonic Frontiers and the Quest for Sub-Hour. This video detailed the Sonic Frontiers speedrunning community in its early days, and the haphazard push to beat the game in under an hour. This grind was so intense for the community at large that as soon as this massive milestone was reached, most people moved on from the game, including me. I haven't made a video on the Frontiers Any% speedrun in the 3 years since the sub-hour was achieved. With the potential for a definitive edition on the horizon, I figured there was no better time to take a look at what this community has accomplished over the years. The public eye may have turned away from this run, but the hardcore community never left. In fact, they've stayed hard at work this entire time using the new updates, routes, and the discovery of new glitches to achieve a milestone that was even bigger. This is the story of the greatest Sonic Frontiers speedrun, and the quest for sub 50. If you haven't watched that original sub-hour video, I would still recommend it as it's one of my personal favorite videos. But if you need a refresher, here's a quick history lesson. Many runners held the world record in the first few months after Frontiers released, but if you look at the history, two names will immediately stick out. The first being KD4, arguably one of the best Sonic speedrunners of all time, and the runner that achieved the very first sub-hour time. Funny enough, KD actually hasn't run the category ever since she achieved the sub-hour. And that leads me to the other name on this list, which is Onaku. Get used to that name because he is essentially the protagonist of this story. Onaku was competitive with KD the entire time she ran the game. It was a neck and neck race to get the sub-hour first, but KD pulled it off in the end.
There we fucking go. Hell yeah!
While KD would win the battle, Onaku would win the war, as over the next few years he would continue to lower the record with little to no challengers over the many years since. As he began to lower the record further and further, a thought of another major barrier entered Onaku's mind. Despite the obvious difficulty in pulling off a run that impressive, the goal Onaku is aiming for is 10 minutes faster than the legendary sub-hour. To achieve this time, they were clearly going to need more than just better execution. One unlikely source of time save was in the eventual patches to the game itself. At this point, Sonic Team was still working to develop new features for the game, like the Momentum Slider, Spin Dash, and the Final Horizon updates. These updates patched out some speed tech, but at the same time added so much more. Mainly, there was the aforementioned Deceleration Slider, which allowed you to have no speed fall off whatsoever while in mid-air, impacting a ton of movement and making other skips easier. This game has a ton of tech, and in an effort to save time later, I'm going to teach you all about this now. I know stuff like this can be tedious, so I'm giving myself a 60-second timer to make this more interesting.
Here we go!
The gritty, homing dash, is the basis of most movement tech in Frontiers, done by cancelling out of an action with the boost. In this case, we cancel out of the homing attack. This can also be done with the stomp attack to perform the Hedgehog Space program, named for obvious reasons. This is an awesome trick name, but it's a mouthful, so from here on we'll call it the HSP for short. Combining the homing dash to keep a lock-on for longer than intended, and the HSP to return to this lock-on with unintended amounts of speed, gives you a brand new trick named the Slingshot. The Slingshot gives you horizontal speed from the homing dash and the vertical speed from the HSP all in one neat little package. If either the HSP or Slingshot are done frame perfectly, you can get ridiculous results. Outside of these main movement abilities, we'll be using the quick step spam to lock Sonic's speed in place while on the ground, or the various automation breaks, which I'll explain more in depth when we get to those. And with your history and speed tech lessons out of the way, let's look at the actual run. And to start, it wouldn't be a modern Sonic game without a Green Hill stage, am I right? After a few homing dashes utilizing the updated momentum physics and some QSS, the stage 1-1 is complete. After completing the first stage, the game immediately throws you into the first island of the run, Kronos Island. We enter the open zone with a tutorial as there are quite a few new systems to explain here. Luckily, we're speedrunners, and since we know our way around, we're going to skip nearly all of this tutorial. After getting through the first few mandatory tutorial checks, we approach this group of enemies. Once here, we can perform the tutorial skip. Onaku starts by defeating one of these enemies and then takes a swim? Bear with me, I'll explain what's going on here. The developers did put some barriers to skipping the tutorial. Mainly, you don't get access to the full pause menu until after you've reached this segment much later. This means you can't even unlock Psyloop, which is important for a myriad of reasons. First off, without Psyloop, it's basically impossible to get max rings, which unlocks an insane speed buff from the power boost. Even if we didn't need side loop, we still need to unlock the stomp ability for HSPs, slingshots, and combat. This means that getting the skill tree unlocked is non-negotiable. Before, we just had to play through the tutorial until we unlocked the skill tree, and that was that. But then the development team started updating the game. After the final Horizon update, you can now die after seeing this cutscene and it would clear the check for the skill tree. After unlocking side loop, you simply spin to win and unlock the power boost. This is estimated to save anywhere from 30 to 40 seconds. Thanks, Sonic Team! Instead of then going to the infamous 1-2 stage and fighting this tower boss, runners found a way to skip this entire section by getting on top of the invisible collision, meant to be a ceiling. From here, they go around this massive invisible wall to reach this spring to the main island. With the momentum changes, however, the runners found an even faster alternative. By utilizing this rail, you can rail jump all the way around this barrier and reach the same spring without all the extra effort. Now that we're past the tutorial, it's time to complete Kronos Island. Normally in these islands, you would collect memory tokens to advance the story with each island's character, and complete cyberspace stages to get keys to unlock the Chaos Emeralds. However, one of the earliest discoveries in Sonic Frontiers shatters this cycle. It was discovered that if you were able to make it into the boss arena early, you could actually locate the trigger to spawn the boss. Even without the other Chaos Emeralds, you can still activate Supersonic, which gives us some pretty interesting lore implications. To get there, Onaku routes in skill points to unlock the stomp ability, as that will be incredibly important for us here. Onaku can now use the HSP and slingshot, which he will immediately implement. This trick in particular requires a frame-perfect version of the slingshot, as this version gives you an absurd amount of height. You might think this is overkill, but they did actually try to stop us from accessing the boss arena with this massive invisible wall. The only thing to do here is to thrash Giganto to this absolute banger. Just about every segment of this island's routing has changed in the years since Katie's sub-hour. From the tutorial segment to skill routing, and the way we reach the boss arena, the community has developed everything to go even faster. While some of the time save is because of patch differences, the gap in pace here is massive, as Onaku exits the first island at 4:38, while Katie's exit was 6:35. The little changes here and there might not seem like much, but when you compile them all together, you get results like this. After blazing through Kronos, we arrive at the arid plateau known as Ares Island. This island has also changed significantly, both in routing and game updates. You can still skip the majority of the island, but you do need to get one Chaos Emerald to trigger the Titan escape sequence. This routing has become incredibly interesting, since you do have to interact with the island, but not nearly as much as we will later on in the other islands. Before, this made runners route in memory tokens in a compact area and complete all missions of the cyberspace stage 2-2. Completing all missions on any given cyberspace stage gives you 7 vault keys, which in theory saves a good amount of time instead of running all around the island collecting a large number of keys. However, that is exactly what the fastest route is these days. You see, Slingshot made navigating the entirety of this massive island possible in an instant, and you would need to visit basically the entire island if you wanted to pull off this route without completing a cyberspace stage. While the idea was theorized for a while, Onaku finally decided to test a route, completely skipping cyberspace. And after some testing and multiple different variations of this route, the Ares Island Tour was born. Since you also need to gather 32 memory tokens to achieve this sequence, you already needed to run around the island quite a bit. Adding a bit more to get the 7 keys wouldn't add much more time. After the new routing is complete, we can actually activate the segment we need to proceed, the Wyvern Chase sequence. This previously had a skip, but that was patched. Essentially, you would gain control in the cutscene right before the chase sequence started, and use this to make Sonic grab onto the wall here. For some reason, these walls had the property to lock Sonic in place even when something like a scripted bridge sequence would begin. This meant that by grabbing onto this wall and skipping the cutscene, you can manipulate Sonic's starting point. And all of this was done so that we could send Sonic straight to his death. We'll see this a few times in the run, but if you die in a cutscene, the game is kind to us and actually just allows us to skip it, even if normally these are unskippable. Grabbing onto the wall this way was patched out, but the manipulation during the initial cutscene wasn't. And you know what they say, where there's a will, there's a way.
green is green.
More Eggman tech. He was planning a full invasion. So where is he?
I just didn't get a lot of speed there, but we didn't get a lot of height either, so...
After skipping the chase sequence in a completely absurd manner, it's time to take on Wyvern. For some reason, the trigger to spawn in the island boss activates at this point. No idea why, but it's just right here in the middle of this open field. If you thought the insanity of Ares Island was over, you would be dead wrong. Generally, a good rule of thumb is in this game, if there's an automated sequence like this lead up to the Wyvern boss, you can probably break it. And this segment is no exception. Yeah, to be honest, it's hard for me to really explain this one. It likely has something to do with the game trying to keep you on track, but to be honest, this trick is just really broken, and I cannot believe it actually saves time. This boss is relatively tame outside of the kick-ass boss theme. Yes, I know every boss theme is good, and Onaku clears the second island of the run. At this point, Onaku is a whopping 6 seconds ahead of his former personal best. It was exactly 50 minutes flat. It might seem like Onaku is fighting for incredibly small amounts of time here, but that is just how optimized this run has become. For comparison, this time saves about another 2 minutes over Katie's sub-hour run. While the new strats, routes, and skips do play into that, Onaku has perfected this run to the point where the first 11 minutes of gameplay are complete with hardly any error. Moving on to our third island of the run, this is Chaos Island. The community has yet to find a full island skip past the first two, so from now on you'll see a more casual version of Sonic Frontiers. If you forgot the normal flow of gameplay, memory tokens help to advance the story, portal gears allow us to enter cyberspace stages help us get vault keys, and vault keys allow us to unlock Chaos Emeralds. It's a lot to track, but just know if Onaku goes out of the way for something, it is likely a resource that has been routed in. This route has changed quite a lot since Katie's sub-hour run. There have been countless variations of the routes for this island, but one thing has stayed the same. The idea is to navigate the island using slingshots all around while collecting resources on your way to the actual goal. The first major goal is yet another Titan escape sequence, and luckily, this one can also be skipped. To get there, Onaku starts by making his way over to Tails to advance the story and collecting resources on the way, completing a very cool SA2 inspired cyberspace stage and crossing massive distances on the way. You're normally intended to take a roundabout path to reach this area, but Slingshot makes getting to the Titan chase sequence easy. The chase skip, known as Shield Escape Skip, is done by navigating around the invisible walls meant to hold you in, and trust me, they are there. Onaku just makes it look easy. After that, you can freely navigate all the way to the end of the sequence. Normally, you are thrown into a lengthy unskippable cutscene here, but if you line it up to die on the same frame you hit the cutscene trigger, you can escape the chase sequence and skip the cutscene. 2 birds with 1 stone. Doing the skip this way sets us up perfectly, as the next objective is right next to this island. But first, Onaku immediately jumps into the second cyberspace stage here. And yes, this is the drift stage that everyone hates. But did you know you can just skip drifting entirely? Yeah, that blew my mind too. Turns out these green dash pads are what trigger the drift state. So if you just, jump over them, or walk around them, you can break the level's main gimmick entirely. Additionally, if you still hit the dash pads like I often do when I'm trying to go too fast, just let Sonic come to a stop, and you'll be back in your normal state. You're welcome. Instead of completing the lengthy 2D platforming challenge, Onaku just uses a slingshot to skip that entirely. After some more quick resource collection, Onaku heads to the third and final cyberspace stage of the island. This one has really cool movement and features one of the only 3D and 2D segments in Frontiers. This works because for whatever reason, hitting this spring down here actually puts Sonic into a 3D state. Combining that game-breaking bug with the homing dash leads to this stage actually becoming viable in any percent. A big theme of this island is to take the segments that took really long casually and skip them entirely. We see another instance of this here with the White Chaos Emerald, with Onaku utilizing a frame-perfect HSP to skip the big platforming challenge that's intended. One more instance happens right after with the massive slingshot over to the Red Chaos Emerald Island, skipping the lengthy underground tunnel segment here. After some more cleanup, there is actually one more major optimization glitch hunters found in the last few years. This freefall segment was always notoriously long and frustrating to get through, even if you played it well. In the early days, people looked for a way to skip this minigame, but came up empty-handed. While they couldn't skip the minigame outright, they did find a way to speed it up. To start, it's important here switching your frame rate to 30 frames per second. Essentially, the game's physics runs collision checks on a frame-by-frame basis. The theory is that by intentionally switching to a lower frame rate, the game isn't able to check collision quite as often. By diving straight through to the spinner enemy here, we can actually use these physics to our advantage. After homing attacking in this section, you can actually jump and briefly gain normal physics, where they would normally be reset. But if you use this to position Sonic in a precise location quickly, you can still use your combat abilities. And I'll let the clip speak for itself. After this, we're essentially at the very end of the island, but of course the most deadly segment of all stands in our way. Pinball. This segment is unironically very difficult and unforgiving. You need to build up to the game's insanely high 5 million point total, which is really only achievable by stacking your multiplier numerous times. And if the game hits you with an unlucky bounce, you lose that multiplier.
Together again? No. Okay, I think I actually might have to reset.
This minigame is S-tier rage bait. Luckily, we can actually skip this segment. This is by far the most complicated skip in the game, so I'm not going to go too deep into the explanation here. The short version is setting an autosave here, entering pinball, reloading the game, positioning Sonic to die during this cutscene, die one more time, die again, and pinball is skipped. I have a full video dedicated to just this skip going over its lore and why this actually works, so if you're curious, check it out after this.
All that's left at this point is the night boss fight, so while Onaku beats this dude's ass, let's get into the pace report. This island is arguably the most impressive showing by Onaku so far, beating Katie's Chaos Island time by over 3 whole minutes. Even though there has been quite a few changes since then, Onaku still saves a ton of time over Katie's run. Onaku has been putting in work and it shows, with him saving 18 seconds in Chaos Island alone. As a reminder here, he just needs to save 1 second to break the barrier he's been working for 3 years to beat.
We're now entering the real endgame of the run, kickstarted by the arrival of Rhea Island. This area is one of the most difficult segments in the entire game, casually and in the speedrun. In a casual playthrough, this island is a lore-heavy platforming gauntlet, with intense music and a sinking feeling that something is about to go wrong. In the speedrun, you'll get that same pit in your stomach, as the tricks you need to pull off here are no joke. Rhea Island is where good runs live or die. With that being said, if you pull it off well, this can be the quickest island in the game by far, with Onaku's old PB completing it in just 2 minutes and 35 seconds. This island is only completed after you reach the top of all 6 of these towers, and Onaku has a unique game plan for each one of these. Immediately, Onaku uses this tree's collision to get a head start for the climb, then continues until this chain of enemies. This HSP in particular is really challenging, as your height actually changes the frame you need to boost on to complete the trick. This means that you essentially need a muscle memory just for this one specific instance of an HSP, since there isn't enough solid ground to help out here. After a few quick attempts, Onaku gets it done. From here, you might imagine that Onaku would boost off the side of this tower and start about halfway up on Tower 2. This was actually the old route, but the community found something even faster. By dropping straight down to enemies lower on the tower, Onaku does a precise homing dash, and stomps at just the right moment. If you do this quickly, you can still use this enemy to activate a slingshot and fly directly to the next tower in a matter of seconds. The next tower doesn't have nearly as fast a way to access it, but Onaku will use this rail booster to get a speed boost towards Tower 4. And yes, we did skip Tower 3 for now. These towers don't need to be done in order, and with the slingshot, backtracking to this tower later won't be a problem. Using an enemy at the base of Tower 4, Onaku performs another pseudo slingshot that will take him all the way to the top. From here is more of the same. Drop down to a group of enemies, do an insanely precise homing dash to land on a small platform, and slingshot to the next one. Rinse and repeat until he flies all the way back to Tower 3 to end the island. And now that I'm done talking about how Onaku goes fast here, I want to talk about just how crazy it is that he is able to do all of this so consistently. Like I mentioned before, this HSP is one of the hardest in the game, as the slope changes your timing for when you need to boost. Imagine a frame-perfect window, which means you need to hit an input within 1/60th of a second that changes depending on your position. Not only that, but I seriously glossed over how insane it is to land on these platforms from a homing dash. There are so many variables that can impact how this needs to change, like your relation to the enemy, speed of Sonic, making sure you do it fast enough, and I could go on. Onaku's mastery of this game and its tech are truly a marvel, and I just wanted to make sure you all could understand just how talented this dude is. With Rhea behind us, we reach yet another incredibly tough challenge, Ouranos Island. I'm personally a big fan of how the routing turned out for this island, as this is exactly what I had pictured in my head for a Frontier speedrun. As the final island, Ouranos requires the most memory tokens and keys to get to the final Titan. This change required innovation, and that came in a few different forms. Primarily, Onaku will be collecting significantly more stray memory tokens than the other islands, amounting to 60 of the 190 total required. Similar to the other islands, Onaku will be hunting down these treasure locations to get a group of memory tokens, vault keys, or portal gears. But there is one more method that you haven't seen yet to get resources. You may have noticed that throughout the run, Onaku has been collecting these purple coins whenever convenient. If you haven't played Frontiers before, this might not mean anything to you, but for those who do know, get excited. While the number of these coins that runners collect has changed over the years, no one has ever been able to completely route out the one, the only, Big the Cat. Big the Cat makes his first appearance in the run, and there's a reason why we can't route this dude out, and that is all to do with Big's fishing shop. As the game progresses, the amount of tokens you get for catching these fish increases more and more every island. However, the cost of these collectibles stays the same, meaning by the time you get to the final island, even just 32 of Big's purple coins can do some damage. And lucky for us, the tutorial fish is free. This allows us to catch 5 fish, and since these 5 fish are consistent, we can actually plan around this. The current route involves buying only 2 memory tokens but 11 emerald vault keys. This is a huge deal, as the amount of keys allows runners to cut out an extra cyberspace stage entirely, saving a stupid amount of time between that and being able to skip certain sections of the island. After our date with Big, nothing but the island and the Titan itself stands between Onaku and the finish line. Considering Ouranos is the last island, the map is littered with tough platforming challenges and enemies. Luckily for us, the very sections that are supposed to make the game more difficult actually make routing much easier. Since there are enemies everywhere, that means we can slingshot easily from just about any area. This allows runners to complete these segments at their leisure. An example of this happens right after the big segment. Heading over to this side island, you usually need to complete a minigame to access. Since it's more efficient routing, runners finish this entire segment first, and then return to the mainland to complete the mandatory minigame. Onaku then continues exploring the main sections of the island, gathering tons of resources on the way. This segment also brings us to the first of the 2 cyberspace stages we'll see on this island. 4-3 is probably my favorite stage across the entire run because of how cool the movement feels and the secret routes used here. Onaku immediately skips the spring and pulley section at the start and grabs the first red ring, before immediately jumping off the stage to his death. I mean, a hidden route. This route lines you up to get a ton of rings for the 50 rings mission and one of the red rings while still being pretty fast. From here, the stage is nearly over and this next section moves so fast. It's a blink and you'll miss it type situation. Onaku homing dashes over to the 4th red rings and lines up for another massive homing dash to hit this spring for the 5th red ring. Normally from this position, you need to go through this pulley sequence to get to the end. Onaku will avoid this section entirely and blast his way to the goal. Yeah, it blew my mind that you could just go under this wall and still make it to the end. These hidden routes, intentional or not, makes this stage just so much cooler, with Onaku nailing this incredibly difficult stage. Following that cool stage, there is some of my personal favorite movement in the open zone to the Red Chaos Emerald. After this point is more of the same, collecting resources, reaching Chaos Emerald shrines, grabbing stray memory tokens. At this point, Onaku is approaching the end of the run, but has one main hurdle to get past, the cyberspace stage 4-8. Now, back in my day, People were pretty convinced that this stage was impossible to complete all of the missions in one run. On the surface, it does seem impossible. The stage is really long, there are multiple routes that you need to access to get all of the red rings, and it just seemed impossible to piece it all together so quickly. But where there's a will, there's a way.
Nice. Okay.
After successfully completing the stage in only 20 seconds, Onaku was unstoppable. All that was left was to collect the Cyan Emerald, complete a minigame at the pyramid, then collect the 7th and final Chaos Emerald. The last Titan of Frontiers is arguably one of the most tricky, and it's got a gun. Luckily, we're at the point of the game where we have the most broken abilities, and we will absolutely abuse them here. By immediately proccing the cross-slash ability, you can continually release and restart this move, to keep Supreme trapped as he takes your whole load. This is enough to wrap up the first phase, and now we enter phase 2, where Onaku makes one of the biggest mistakes of the entire run.
What are you talking about?
Once you catch the boss, you can start wailing on it until about this segment in the HP bar. At this point is where Supreme will stop taking damage entirely. This part really confused me casually, but all you gotta do is break one of Supreme's toys, and he'll go into a full-blown tantrum mode, prompting a cool QTE segment and the end of the fight. As Sonic and crew wrap up the story, I want to take a moment to talk about this community and what this run truly means for it. As illustrated by the amazing Spec-Wee in the chat here, after the sub-hour, everyone thought the next 10-minute barrier would just never happen. Sub-hour was already such an incredible accomplishment, and the amount of effort the runners and glitch hunters put in to make it happen was something truly special. And that's why this run means even more than just another world record. At the time of recording, this run stands 4.5 minutes ahead of second place. And that's not a slight on second place, as this runner is also incredibly talented. Sorry, Zora. This is just to illustrate how dominant Onaku is at this moment in time. He took all of the Unreal discoveries over the years and continually improved his craft, even when there was little to motivate him. Onaku did so much of this for the pure love of the game, and to piggyback off of that, the same could be said for the community. Just about everything discussed in this video was discovered in the last few years, when the community was quietly chugging along. Both the community at large and Onaku deserve a ton of respect for what they've achieved here. And now, it's time for the big finish.
I was actually like tapped into the game. Oops. GG. It's done. It's just done. That's a weird thing to think about. Like, until someone gets close to like sub 50, like I don't need to run any percent.
The Sonic speedrunning community once again never ceases to amaze me. Frontiers Definitive Edition is potentially on the horizon, and I'm really excited to see what that brings for this community in the near future. Make sure to follow my channel for future updates on the Sonic speedrunning community, and also check out Onaku's Twitch channel with the link in the description. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time!